Hello, everyone. We should introduce ourselves. I'm Lori Forte. I'm the producer of Ice Age, the first Ice Age, and the second Ice Age, The Meltdown.
Hi, I'm Rob Cavallari. I'm the effects supervisor on Ice Age The Meltdown.
I'm Tom Cardone. I was the art director.
Hi, it's Dave Esnald. I was the lighting supervisor.
Hi, this is Andrew Bedini. I'm the senior lighting lead.
Hi, this is Jim Bresnahan. I was one of the supervising animators on Ice Age 2.
Hi, this is Aaron Hartline. I'm a lead animator on Ice Age.
Hi, my name is Matt Simmons. I was the animation technical lead.
This is Galen Chu, one of the animation supervisors.
I'm Mike Aringas. I was the materials supervisor on Ice Age The Meltdown.
I'm Christopher No. I'm from the story department.
Hi, I'm Mike Thurmeyer. I was the third and final supervising animator on Ice Age.
And here we are back in the Ice Age. And as we started the first movie with the Scrat, so we start this movie with the Scrat too. And it was a choice from story and character to do that. As the Scrat ushered in the Ice Age in the first movie, he's now back in the Ice Age, but he's going to soon show us that there is more to the Ice Age than meets the eye, and that things are changing. And it was a really fun sequence to do with him because he's a favorite character of everybody's. And Pete DeSev did a brilliant design on him. So Chris Wedge does a wonderful voice with him. But as far as the technical aspects of this sequence goes, what did you guys have to do?
This was the first sequence that we did for the movie. In fact, we did this before Robots was finished.
This shot actually was redone. I believe the shot with him swinging on the tongue.
Right.
Isn't that your shot, Gal?
Yeah, we did that in record time. I guess you guys had the first version and you weren't as happy with it, and so we tried a different idea with Scrat dangling, and you guys really liked it, and we had about a week to get it in front of Robots, so we pulled it out by using three animators in total that animated on it, and we pulled it off.
In fact, I think the teaser went out internationally without the tongue dangling because we couldn't get it in on time.
Yeah. Two versions out there.
Collector's edition.
That's right.
That's right.
All the real fans.
This was also one of the first times that we got to see water, and as a lot of people know, we tend to kind of take things a little realistically. And Tom Cardone was, you're very interested in us pushing the boundaries of what water should look like, and we were getting these beautiful azure blues and stuff like that.
Here's another example of what our renderer can do. Notice that the Scrat and his passenger there are reflecting in the ice slide everything that's wet. All of the materials that are wet here in all of these scenes are reflecting everything around them, the characters and the environment.
And the color and design in this part of the film, we just wanted this to be really fun and just like a bright, clean winter day. And just, call back to the first film in this part of the movie.
Boy, this global warming is killing me.
This is too hot.
The meltdown has happened. We don't know that yet. The animals don't know that yet. But to show that soon this paradise is going to end up being the disaster that's going to soon befall them. So it was very important for this scene to be a lot of fun because the animals don't suspect what's coming.
Yeah, Carlos, didn't really have an idea of exactly what he wanted, so he kind of gave the sequence to the animation department to do some previs, and we got guys to do some boards and ideas, and then it sort of came together in animation with all these great ideas.
This sequence also has a lot of different types of water elements in it. The splashes, the ripples, the bubbles. A lot of these things were things we had to sort of discover how to produce for this film, both from sort of a natural animation perspective, but also a style perspective that made sense for the Ice Age sort of overall look and feel.
Love those fake figures. It looks great too, and you'll probably hear this many times throughout the commentary, but we should just underscore right from the start that this film had an unprecedented production schedule. So as we admire all of the amazing effects and animation, we should keep in mind that I want to say that I'm very proud that we did this in a schedel that was really unbelievable.
Absolutely,
never before in the industry.
So I think on Robots, didn't we have 2 years to animate it? But on this one, we had 8 months.
Yeah.
The first sequences didn't start until August, September, I think, and then they were done in February.
And you think it'd be easier because it's the second film we've already done one with these characters, but basically everything was rebuilt from scratch for the new technology. So the characters had to be re-rigged, referred, everything. So
I think from an effects standpoint too, Rob, this was I don't know how many times harder than the first movie. this is a much more effects heavy film. So
I would say a factor of 3 based on the previous 2 films, and we had less than half the time to do it.
Look, I opened my can.
One of the challenges for this movie, just for us to kind of get to the finish line in time, was just sort of how to strategize, all of the effects. And it was really a lot of efforts on the part of everybody in the whole studio to sort of look to really just analyze what's the most important thing to put in every shot. In that first sequence, we saw a lot of water elements, but if you look carefully, there's not like every single detail that has to be there. We realized from looking at a lot of other reference and other animated films that really you can sell the idea with kind of just getting sort of the meat of the concept in place and don't worry about all of the secondary details and little ripples and things that, would be there if you made a realistic movie like The Day After Tomorrow.
And from a story point of view also, regarding the schedule and regarding everything that we've all been talking about, it was also difficult, actually, as a follow-up to the first movie, to come up with the right storylines that would evolve the characters and be as good as or better than the first movie emotionally. And I think what we did in these first opening sequences for the first act of the movie is we had to really do a lot of setup. So not only was it reintroducing the environment and showing that there's a change to the environment, that the environment was changing, that also the characters were changing their stories. And so in these sequences, we've set up their story arcs with Sid wanting respect and not getting it from his herd. And Manny will soon discover that he's the last mammoth and won't be able to have the family that he wants. And Diego's fear of the water. Everything, all of those character arcs are set up in these first sequences. And as far as, character goes, I mean, we're reliant upon the animators to portray to illustrate those emotions and all of those stories. And I don't know if there's, you can speak to any of those character emotions. Story first comes into play. So I know Chris, as part of the story team, there was a lot involved in these sequences to set up the characters again, reintroduce them.
I think from a sort of a broad perspective, the story approach with we create the film as drawings before anything happens, technically, or going to animation. We try to create, and the director Carlos tried to direct us to create as comprehensive a story reel as possible, including the effects, including the environments, and of course, including the character emotion, because we didn't have any time for, finding it down the road. So we had a pretty comprehensive reel before we moved forward into animation.
I think that really helped us in animation because it really allowed the animators to just concentrate on the performance and just making the shot what it really needs to be. We didn't have a lot of guesswork that we needed to do. I mean, there was a lot of creative decision making we had to do, but for the most part, we didn't have any scenes that were cut. Not like we had on previous films.
We couldn't afford the
this
time
was great.
to cut it.
But it's always better when you get boards that have clear ideas and stuff. And sometimes if a director's foggy on a concept, it makes it harder to execute an animation because animators are great at bringing character to stuff, but they're not necessarily thinking of the entire picture, of the entire movie. So, they'll maybe do things that shouldn't be there in terms of performance. So when you have good storyboards and you know what the character's supposed to be doing, it's always 10 times easier and you get better work out of it.
Right. Well, it's also good when you have a full script and you know where the whole arc of the stories are going, all the character arcs are going, and then you actually, you're not working in just little details. You actually have an idea of where you need to be in those smaller sequences.
From an animation standpoint, I think the advantage of this film is it was such a short schedule that it was like our first approach was like usually the best approach. It wasn't like we didn't have time to go back and go, okay, we're going to tweak this a bit. It was kind of like, let's just get this raw performance in there. And I think it really shows. I mean, there's some really energy in these shots that, and then also like going back to the old characters like Manny, Sid and stuff, we kind of knew those guys already. We realized, okay, we're just going to rely on their old performances, like Manny always kind of scowling or Sid doing his little scratches or weird little walks. So it was a really fun film to animate on. I mean, we really,
Carlos and I called it the Blink movie because there was a book that came out called Blink where it's about making decisions and going with your gut instinct and not thinking about anything, not having the time to think about or analyze your decision and just going with your first gut instinct. And so since we didn't have time to think about anything else, we just blinked and those were our decisions.
and Carlos being an animator too, I mean, he really knew what he wanted as far as the performance right on.
Carlos is super specific as a director. Like, he will get in and work with you on how high an eyelid is I mean, like, and that could be great sometimes. But it's like if the director knows what he's talking about, it actually makes it harder because then you're like, "Ugh, you can't pull anything over on him."
The funny thing is, though, then you look at that shot and go, "Oh man, he was right."
We don't have anyone from Fur here, but one thing people might not know if they're not familiar with the industry or whatever is that underneath all that fur you have the model of the character, and when the animators animate, they don't see any of the fur, so we've got like all this expression, all this subtle little movement, muscular details, and then you see it rendered and you realize that all gets sandblasted by the fur. I mean, it looks great, but it'd be interesting to see the movie without the fur on it. You get
Sid has very, very elaborate scapula shoulder blades on his back, and they're all rigged very accurately, but you see very little of it.
Yeah.
Dirty fur.
Well, this is the part on the Eviscerator where they're going to discover that that everything is not the way it seems, and that the ice is melting. And this is the first big reveal that Manny learns that the whole valley is going to flood, that the ice is melting. But this was an immense shot and a really difficult thing that everybody worked on, from Tom Cardone all to Story, Tom Cardone, everywhere. So anyone can speak to this shot that we're about to see?
Well, the big challenge I remember from the story when we started it was how to depict this without giving it away too early, because the guys go up top and we have to somehow create the illusion that everything's fine until Diego discovers it. So sort of working with the art department and what the story needs were in camera, trying to hide that reveal until this moment, in fact.
Yeah, how'd they get up there, Chris?
Story perspective.
The timeline.
Stairway up
time cut.
I think it was also very important just to note how quickly that shot had to be done, because it was also done for promotional materials, and lighting just kicked it out. And it was like 3 or 4 days of lighting.
Wow.
Yeah, impressive.
And it looks amazing. It's a great shot.
Really proud of it.
What?
So that whole shot is CG. There's no painted elements in it.
Not just the clouds.
Oh,
That's huge. That's a giant set.
Yeah,
Some really
it's
good-
huge.
Some really good examples here of some effects splashes that sort of highlight one of the themes that we tried to set out to achieve in this movie. We wanted to not make our elements look realistic, but really have a lot of composition and performance that really made sense for what the characters are doing. So what we did in effects is come up with some tools that basically allow us to direct the physical aspects of traditional effects in such a way that we could actually, like, for example, with the splashes, we could part them so we could get a good read on the character's face and really get a nice pose for, the overall shape of it. And I think it really was successful in this sequence when you see them coming down the slide and skidding across the lake surface.
Dam's gonna break. The entire valley's gonna flood. Flood's real.
Another major thing, the big difference, the fur. We talked about it a little bit before, but basically we worked with very rudimentary fur on the first film, and if you notice that everybody just feels a little bit more cuddly, especially our main characters. They don't differ too much. You can still recognize them, but they're just more tangible.
You can also see the fur blowing in the wind, and underwater you can see the movement of it. And we couldn't do that in the first one.
Well, even when they're walking, the fur is reacting to the character's motions. So all of it is swaying back and forth as the characters move, which is also something we weren't doing in the first movie. But like Andrew said, it's a subtle thing that makes them, I think, just look more cuddly.
And we had the ability to groom, all the characters have different types of fur. Some of them have like a more matte fur that sticks closer to the body contours, and then within each character you have the fur is usually shorter on the face, and then it gets longer as it moves down the body, and we could make it more coarse or curlier or bushier around the butt if we wanted to, and just to give everybody like a variation within each character really made them feel like you could just reach out and touch them.
We also have the ability to control the color of the fur much more elaborately than we did on the last movie. So every character has very complex color patterns in them. Every hair on every character is different than is a different color than the hair next to it. It adds a lot to the richness of the way they look.
Another major thing that was really cool too is that you have the established main characters, but characters that were introduced new to Ice Age: The Meltdown, such as the vulture that you just saw. People could go ballistic with it and just take it into an entire, just go nuts with it. people had a lot of fun working on it, especially the birds in the film. Everybody was blown away with the results of them.
Here comes one of Matt's favorite scenes. The bad guys here are suspended in ice, and our proprietary renderer does a great job of accurately rendering refractions in things like ice and glass. You'll notice there's even little air bubble sheets around the characters that are suspended there in the ice. But it's distorting them so much that the guys in animation weren't able to really visualize exactly where the characters were going to show up in frame, right?
Yeah, so we had to go back and forth between sync renders and not to try and blindly place them where they were going to show up.
This was Matt's.
This is
another one of
Yeah, talk about that. Crowd shot rule. That's like one of the largest crowd shots in the film that was not done without any proxy boxes, which I can explain later. But in this film, like we had all, or rather no flat ground planes, and it made for kind of difficult for things like footfalls or whatever, but it could give the crowds that we wanted to put together more organic and natural, like motion to how all these characters would interact with each other. So I think even though more difficult, the final product was better than the first film.
How hard was it to texture that? That's what.
It was very, very easy. It was so gross that we had to turn back to texture.
Actually, no, it wasn't gross enough. I kept saying, make it look
We
more
second
like...
guessed it, actually. We had it really gross, and we pulled it back, and then when Lori and Carlos saw it, they said, no, it's supposed to be nasty, so we made it a little bit wet.
Mike, did you bring in reference for that?
Had a lot of reference, yeah.
Where is James?
Now, going back to the villains, Chris, remember our villains?
Yes, I was going to touch base on that real quick, that the villains, while we're in the story, sort of had quite a metamorphosis over time. I think when we started, they were some kind of prehistoric whale, and there was sort of a generic water-land dispute between them, and then we went to a frozen dinosaur, and they talked for a while and had master plans of taking over the globe.
And there were three of them.
That's right. We had a comic relief villain, which was great, and we were sad to cut. But where we landed was sort of the silent predator, which I think we think actually is very effective, and ended up being one of the scarier villains in recent animated movies. And I think audiences really react to that, including kids really enjoy it.
I remember that day when we screened the movie back to back two times. One had the dog and villains, and one had the Jaws kind of predator, and it was so obvious.
Again, the example of the blink philosophy you're talking about. And if you're not in the production of a movie, you don't know how hard it is to let something go that you've been used to for so long.
Exactly.
But
I think it was really difficult because we all love the villains. We love their backstory. We love them talking. But ultimately, we had so many characters and so many arcs and so many stories going on that we wanted to spend most of the time with our main characters, and that really took away from it. But the other important issue was that they just weren't menacing enough when they were talking. They were comedic in some ways, and so it was just easier to let them go and to play them, like you say, Chris, as silent villains.
And we tried to use them as the face of the Meltdown.
Exactly.
And they were very effective in that way. They pursued the villains. We couldn't have the glacier pursue our heroes, but the villains certainly could do that.
Exactly.
So they became sort of the personification of the flood.
That's a good way to put it.
This is my favorite animated sequence in the movie, I think, just because from an animation perspective, this is like, it's like there's no background. It's just like white and blue, and it's just the Scrat and just his nut just doing crazy stuff. So from an animator's perspective, it's like the sequence is probably the juiciest in the whole film.
From a story perspective, too, it's sheer character, sheer character action and situational, and it's just, without dialogue, I think it's just a brilliant sequence.
It's just classic Scrat sequence here.
I also think what's great about this is the pacing of it. It kind of unravels at its own pace versus being frenetic, and it's really kind of a nice moment because of that.
It slows down every now and then, too.
Yeah.
The great thing is pauses.
And one of the things we were trying to do with the Scrat throughout the pieces, you'll see, is that he sort of became how we would go back to the dam and see it decay over time. So he became sort of our callback to, this glacier is melting. So as you'll see these Scrat bits, just like this, you'll see, that the glacier is getting more and more decayed.
And that's different from the first movie, because in the first movie, the Scrat kind of traveled sort of with them, or was just sort of a little like exclamation point on a sequence. And
Correct.
You can almost cut all the Scrat sequences together for this film and have like a little.
Right. We wanted to do something a little different in this film with the Scrat, and I think what you said is exactly what we tried to do. And also by giving him a little bit more of a heroic role at the end, it really sort of gave him a whole new sort of lease on story.
Sid, I'm gonna fall on you again, and this time I will kill you.
Okay, someone doesn't like the classics.
The major thing about doing some of the matte paintings was you're basically able to get a whole wide scope of what the sets look like very quickly without having a whole bunch of departments to go ahead and, make all the trees and make all the characters and, make all these giant sets. Instead, somebody from Tom's team could just go in there and just paint everything, make it look very similar, and then we take it into lighting and just kind of mush it all together so it all feels cohesive with the rest of the film.
So that's what happened with the icicles that we just saw, where Manny was lamenting that he was the last mammoth, that he very well might be the last mammoth, and saw all the reflections of himself in the icicles. That's what you're just talking about.
For the lighter guys, like how this was a tough sequence to render, correct?
This was one of the first sequences, and from a propagation point of view, I think it has the most density of any trees and objects and stuff like that. And basically, we would start it and stop it maybe once every month, and then we just essentially waited to push it till the end of the production schedule, and wait till everybody was really honed up and could really handle the task at hand.
Well, one thing I want to mention real quick about that with the guy sitting on the log. There was a moment when we wanted to try and go highbrow and not make that a fart joke, but honestly, we just couldn't come up with anything better than that. So and it plays beautifully, so we left
then it degraded even more from there because we talked about who was talking about putting more flies.
Right. I wanted to make that point that we were trying to find the right level of kind of humor and indecency. We actually had the flies animating an effect going into his mouth. Crawling around Charlie's butt and everything. We figured we kind of found the other end of the spectrum and had to pull it back a little bit from there.
Yeah, while we all laughed at it, we all agreed that it was a little bit too gross.
Yeah, but everybody's all snooty with fart jokes, like, oh man, this is where highbrow filmmakers were geniuses.
Always
but then
huge laugh.
It's worth the laugh.
It's the biggest laugh in the movie.
There's nothing funnier is the problem.
Actually, a big challenge in this sequence was making that their little peas would show up when they would shoot. I think that lighting, you guys had to do a lot of special motion blur tricks to make those show up.
Yeah, we had to render the peas with and without motion blur and just kind of hand put them in there so that you could read them at certain key moments. Otherwise, they just turn into an invisible blur across the screen.
It's a sequence like this where the action is so frenetic that sometimes it's hard to find just on story drawings, and this is one where I think, Galen, you worked with some animators at the beginning and really previs the sequence out to make it into something cool.
Basically, previs is just when animators just get in there and jam it out and just create some shots, and we hand it over to editorial and to the director, Carlos, and they kind of just put it all together again. It just basically the difference is that we're providing them with the same action, different camera angles, and shooting in several different ways so that they can pick and choose when they want to use.
Also, that shot that just passed by, the chicken shot, where they're doing the that we must have filmed 25 animators doing different chicken renditions of shaking their butt and doing their wings and stuff, and then the animator just picked the best two, and
which actually ended up being his performance.
Picked his performance.
He just wanted to see everyone else do it.
Correct.
In those reflection shots before, that was actually Manny underneath the water. And we decided to get the reflection that way, as opposed to trying to do a true reflection this time. We do true reflections later on in the film, which do, I think, end up turning out better.
Yeah, that reflection was cheated a little bit to make sure that we could really read Manny and his emotions during that moment.
That shot went around in circles for a while. Originally, it was supposed to be almost an homage to Ice Age 1's cave painting shot, where we'd actually see the actual cave paintings of Manny, his wife, his child in it. And, just for, story reasons and all kinds of, aesthetic reasons, we finally came up with that, and we represented each of them with leaves. That was really elegant.
This was a difficult scene to actually write or come up with her story because it was introducing Ellie as a really unique, fun, different character. And the idea that she believes she's a possum, I mean, I think a lot of, people might think that that's a little extreme and how are you going to get away with it? But I think Queen Latifah pulled it off. The animators pulled it off. The writing, the storyboards, it all kind of came together in a very unique performance that made her so endearing and so genuine and lovable that her quirkiness was actually, a plus as opposed to something that you're perplexed about. And very quickly, we actually bring the possums in, and once you find out the backstory that she was brought up by possums, it all becomes very clear why she's behaving this way. And it's just so charming.
We had a lot of actually animation challenges with her because, I mean, it kind of looks effortless on the screen, but I mean, it wasn't easy to make her look feminine, to make a mammoth look feminine. So you've got to give her a different weight, style of movement, a different gait. And then also she's got to be a mammoth who doesn't know she's a mammoth but moves kind of like a possum. So she's got a little more energy than Manny.
Part of the reason that it does look easy is going back to what Galen was saying about previs. We also do what we call a period of experimental animation before we actually go into production. And a lot of the things that are really unique about Ellie in terms of movement were discovered in that time period. Her crawling pattern as a possum and things like that.
I think it was really a joint effort because I remember we had Manny and Ellie side by side and we were like, whoa, we can't tell the difference. And I think it was a joint effort between art, between materials and lighting and, animation to really get her to look different and
we
to make
spent
her
a lot
look
of time
feminine.
on her eyelashes and just her eyelids
Right.
to get her to feel feminine in the eyes.
And Tom spent a lot of time on color to differentiate the two and make her a lot more feminine.
We should have just put a bow in her hair.
A little skirt on her.
We were trying, just from a color palette standpoint, we were trying to keep all our good characters in a warm palette, and then the villains, since they were the personality of the water and they related to the water, we kept them cool. So it was a challenge to try to find, different, interesting color palettes for each character while staying, on the warm side of the color wheel.
It's also challenging, I think, from a color perspective also because you're in nature and we're not in ice anymore and snow.
Right.
So the warm palette is really what we're seeing in the backgrounds
Right.
and the environments. And so you really need to distinguish. They needed to pop out from that as
Yeah.
well. So there were some extra challenges there.
And actually, that's something that I think lighting did a great job with in this film, is using just really, pushing the staging of the characters with the light and value structure, lighting and materials. Using the materials and the light shapes of the background to really draw your eye to the part of the screen where the action is.
How about those piranhas? Oh, that's the next
this is
sequence.
this is the
Identify
but
that.
this is the first time we go. One of the times we go back to the Scrat, and again we see the glacier wall and what's happening, and there he goes.
The Scrat is actually had a bit of a tweak on his character from the first movie in that last sequence when you saw him like with the what was that, the pole or whatever. He's sort of taking on some anthropomorphic kind of characteristics that we really didn't touch on in the first movie, and we kind of play with a little bit in this one, and I think it's kind of a cool place to take him.
And lighting, one of the things that we did, and to what Tom was saying, to push the characters and push the background back, is it's in nature, we have a lot of warm backgrounds, but we push a lot of cool atmosphere to try to make that recede into the frame and blend to the sky just a little bit and keep our warm, happy characters as the focal point in the front of the frame.
Another technique to keep the characters up front is we tend to blur the backgrounds like the way an actual camera in real life would do it, which is another technique. We also backlight characters just to kind of give them a little rim of separation on the side. You can see in Ellie's butt right there. You can see how it's a little backlit. It's just to get off the background just a little bit more.
Hey, wasn't this a set from the first movie?
Those rocks look familiar.
Those rocks look
Part of the
familiar.
rocks, yeah, some of the rocks were from the first film, but it was
I didn't even know.
Yeah.
because it was a really nice model, and we were going for a similar feel.
Yeah.
Another really cool thing that I thought was an excellent thing was the reuse of sets across the film because of the tight schedule. Mike's team basically got 3-4 model sets, and then basically you would put snow on one, ice on the other.
Yeah, well, there's certainly a lot of snow scattered around. There's a lot of rocks scattered around, but because we do everything procedurally in our materials, we can change the surface qualities very easily. That means that we sort of have algorithms that we write that can describe the character of a rock, and we give ourselves a lot of different controls to warp that into different types of rocks, for example. So across the movie, even scenes like this, every single rock is a subtly different color than the one next to it. You can see things like the dust from the ground plane here sort of washed up onto the sides of the rocks. And then we also, since you see it a little bit in this sequence, since everything's melting, the earth is a little bit warmer around the edges. But it was very easy to kind of reuse these sets and reuse the same surfaces over and over again in the movie, and just simply dial the colors and the textures just a little bit so that everything felt like it was changing as the characters walked through the world.
I just want to touch upon the eyes. I mean, Carlos made a big effort in this movie with all the animators to focus on the eyes and make sure the eyes were expressive. And you can really see it in these moments between Manny and Ellie, all the scenes between them. I mean, you're not seeing their mouth, but you're seeing their eyes. Gallon what guys? What?
Well, I was going to also comment on that and what Gallon said earlier, that we know these characters, we know them. And so in a way it was kind of like easy to go back and recreate the performances, but I think we pushed it even farther on this one. And only a few of the animators from Ice Age worked on this film. And so I just want to say that was very successful.
Continent's moving faster than you. Let's go. We got to catch up with the others.
Going back to the eyes too, it's more important with the mammoths only because you don't see the mouth so much from 3/4 view. You kind of read this trunk moving, but you really need to make sure the emotion comes across with the eyes.
A big technical advancement in the eyes from the first movie is that we set it up so that the animators would have control over the size of the pupil, not just the pupil, but the iris also. So it seems like every shot I've ever noticed that you guys were animating those things like crazy. This stuff is just going all.
Yeah, too much.
I think Carlo.
There was a time in the beginning where we were like, "Yahoo! Let's bring those suckers down."
I remember they called me in once and said, "We got to talk about Crash and Eddie because their pupils are way too small." And I had to turn around and say, "That's not us anymore. That's the animator." We told them to do that.
Yeah, Carlos regretted ever giving us the option.
We're gonna lock that down.
Yeah.
For the next footage.
Yeah. Another major thing about eyes is that to make an eye look alive, you always have to have like a little ding on it. And just from lighting's point of view, that was always on our checklist. Always make sure you can read the dings.
The highlight.
Yeah, the highlight.
Yeah.
The nice little bright white thing that sits between the whites of the eyes and the iris. See,
like nerdy.
This sequence was extraordinary to watch develop in story. The story team did a great job on this. The story storyboard artist did an amazing job on this. How difficult was this technically and animation wise for you guys?
I'm just actually curious about the bubbles. How are all the bubbles done?
Oh, as I was mentioning before, we kind of realized we wanted to get some like good expressive techniques in there, so we came up with some kind of cool tools and some cool techniques that allowed us to kind of get a consistent look very easily. We knew we were going to have a lot of bubbles being attached to characters, and so we were able to come up with a system that gave you a very good look kind of straight away. But one of the interesting things that, so as Laurie's point about just sort of some of the watching the sequence develop, this was originally one of the most technically challenging sequences. It was very long. There was a lot of different elements that were very complicated in effects, and through the great work that we did sort of early on in the process with layout and just sort of really studying what's most important, we kind of got the complexity pared down so that really there's only like 3 basic effects. There's just water surfaces, there's bubbles, and there's splashes. And it was just variations on those themes. And so while there was a lot of it, it was the same kind of thing, which made it a lot more doable.
Because I remember when we were first boarding these sequences, these huge water sequences, and we were told we really couldn't show that much water. And I'm thinking, well, why are we making a movie about a flood? We could be showing
That's
water.
what we wanted to know.
And so we actually had to go through these sequences with Rob and Carlos and the storyboards artists and really simplify every sequence so that we shoot from certain angles and the layout. So we only see it from certain angles, and we only have so many shots where the effects are present. And it was a great balancing act and a great challenge for everybody. I think
that makes it more interesting.
Yeah.
It's like if you don't show it everything all the time, when you do show things, then it's more interesting, it has more of an impact.
That's kind of the nature of filmmaking, I think. And I think in a lot of ways, yes, those restrictions forced us to think, and I think in the end made a tighter, better sequence.
I got to tell
the
you,
board.
Lori, I don't know if I ever told you the story, but when my nephew and my sister-in-law went to this movie, like he was terrified of the water creatures. And while that sequence was happening, he kind of grabs on his mom and says, those creatures are going to stay in the water, right, Mom? They're not coming up. She's like, yeah, son. This next shot was that thing. I think we traumatized him for life.
Yes.
Then we did our job. Good
Yeah.
job.
We get commissions from Ted. No, actually, when we tested these sequences, we tested the movie on one test audience, and we had some 12-year-olds, some 11-year-olds, and we thought, we were afraid it might be too scary, but ultimately the kids were saying it is scary, but it's a good kind of scary. They actually, it was cool. They wanted to see more, so I think we were on good territory. We were in good territory.
Coming up with Scrat in the water, it really showcases the way we could move the fur around to make it really feel like it was floating in a body of water.
Did you set those values, Simmons? Like, was that you? Yeah.
It's similar. It's the exact same technology used to do the wind. It's just everything's set thicker and slower, right?
I must have seen this sequence 1,000 times, and I laugh every time I see the teeth open up. It's such a funny moment.
This shot right here of the karate, I really had to study a lot of Bruce Lee, Van Damme, Steven Seagal. And then that wasn't enough. I was freaking out. Like, I got to get this shot. I got to get it right. I don't know anything about karate. It's like my first karate class. They told me to do a squat, and my hands ripped. I'm like, my wife, luckily, she's a 2nd-degree black belt. So I wake her up at 2 a.m. going, honey, you got to pose this out with me. Pen and paper, like drawing her, like, hold that leg straight, hold it straight. Okay, I think I got this. I got to give her props for that. She really
This shot here, to make it look bigger, animation actually had to make Ellie go into the ground to make her disappear.
Just put her in the ground and asked for the guys in the departments down to help us out a little bit.
You know what? When the animator showed me that, I had no idea. I was like, looks great. Fine. I didn't know he totally cheated, so I apologize.
All the trees were also supposed to be oak trees. That's the way it was designed. And then we had a problem with the technology at the time, just at the point in the production when we made this, and just switched them all out for pine trees, which gave it a very different look. And so we had to kind of just roll with that.
Yeah, wasn't the trees that they rendered? It took so long to actually compute. And
I think it was like 100 hours per frame.
Yeah, right. No leaves.
There was a lot of producerial step-in at that point.
we
learned to love pine.
The grass and the leaves were just a new technology for us, and it was just something that we were figuring out as we were going along.
But not pine. Pine was fine.
Pine was fine. Used the same concept from the first movie, yeah, so it was nice and easy.
I love this shot here. This is another great example of where you can really use effects to kind of help accentuate the humor of a story point there with his fur kind of being left behind.
It's always amazing, these shots here, like when characters are traveling through space very quickly, and there's always some kind of weird motion blur glitch where, the fur won't travel at the same speed as the rest of the body, like the teeth, the eyes, and stuff like that. So you'll see, like, the eyes, like, running, like, right behind the character, and you always get these really creepy results, and we always keep just, like, a big library of that stuff just to kind of throw around, and there might even be some stuff like that on the DVD. We'll see.
Yeah, that flying through the air shot was actually more difficult because Carlos wanted the wind to seem like it's going faster. And if I just let it calculate by itself, it wouldn't appear to be that fast. So we had to simulate, like, making the fur be able to move lighter through a slower field. It was pretty difficult.
Proxy back.
Don't bitch! Wait! My legs!
They're a great character moment for these guys.
Yeah.
It was just such a joy to watch them, come alive, and Sean William Scott and Josh Peck, who did the voices for Crash and Eddie, were just so much fun.
Thinking that little section too, I really feel like the sound designer, the composer, really made a strong choice there. Plus that little section so much.
John Powell did an amazing job in the entire movie. I mean, from the whack-a-mole sequence, the opening sequence with the water park, he had such beautiful themes, and he interwove them throughout the movie, and so they just sort of resonated.
That's the most exciting thing for us about seeing the movie, is that while we're working on it, all we have is the dialogue from the actors, but we don't have any of the music and none of the sound effects. Those are all added later. And it's always such a treat for us. We've seen the imagery 1,000 times while we're working on it, but when we go to the theater and hear the sound effects and the music, it's like watching the movie for the first time.
Yeah.
Because of our truncated schedule, it was pretty much that for us too. Carlos and I.
It's true. From an artist point of view, most of the people sitting in the room worked on all three of Blue Sky's films, Robots, and Ice Age 1 as well. And, we'd see stuff, we'd see a lot of screenings of it because we had the time or whatever. But basically, most of us, the first time we really saw the movie put together was in our screening right before, a week before it was actually released worldwide. And we were just blown away by it.
I gotta say, it's like everything really came together so well. It's so much better than the first movie in terms of like everything. It's just, man, I'm just amazed.
Considering all the obstacles we had and the chance no chance to go back and do anything, everything really did come together smoothly. Yeah. It did fall into place, and we kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, and it really never did.
Except
everyone just worked so well together.
It's coming up.
Let's start the list of things that were hard about the Willow. I'll just say
looks nice.
The materials were very hard to achieve. Trying to get all of those tiny little wisps coming off of every single frond of the willow trees was a very difficult effect that we worked on. I think the end result, it was beautiful, but it took quite a while to get.
Also, in animation, we thought we could animate one willow tree and then just put it on a bunch of willow trees the animation went on, but it just didn't look very good at all. So we ended up needing to tweak every single tree individually. So that was
these shots were heavy. Like all those trees take up a lot of computing resources. So it was a nightmare.
Thankfully, you painted this one.
Yeah, thank you.
This sequence actually is one of my favorite sequences in the movie, and it was actually inspired by Queen Latifah. Carlos and I were at a recording session with her, and we were talking about the character, and she started thinking about the character in the way that you think about an elephant. That she said, well, elephants have really great they really have great memories. So wouldn't a mammoth, wouldn't she at some point remember that she was a mammoth at some point? So we started talking to her about it and thinking about it, and we went away, and she completely inspired the sequence, because we started, initially the sequence was about Manny's memory, about his past, and then it became, after we spoke to her, about her memory. And it really brings her character full circle, because she thinks she's a possum, and now she has this memory of her being a mammoth, and then she steps into the footprint of a mammoth shortly after this moment, and she has now embraced the fact that she isn't indeed a mammoth. And it was just a wonderful, emotional, resonant moment.
From an animation standpoint, this sequence was really great because it was no dialogue. It was just pure acting, I think.
And pure emotion.
Yeah, and pure emotion. I mean, animators just really love that, where it's just all the performance coming through. And usually, we get like some great dialogue, but to actually get a sequence like this where it's just you up there acting, and I think the animators did an amazing job.
So much emotion gets conveyed too without any dialogue. That's what's amazing about it.
It's the eyes again, like you guys were talking. I mean, I think the greatest comment we got one time, I think it was either for Bunny or the first Ice Age, but Miyazaki made some comment about, I think, Manny's eyes. And that was, so I think of that every time we got shots like that.
That's quite some praise.
Yeah, that's good praise.
Wasn't there even supposed to be a line here, and we took it out?
Yes, there was a line, a mammoth never forgets, but everybody grimaced, everybody moaned when they heard that line, so we yanked it.
It's just so much better to tell the story through the eyes.
I'm saying it with acting.
More willow trees.
More willow trees. I remember on this
willow.
I got this sequence after Mike had gone through, what he went through with the willow trees, and I remember it's like, I've got to triage this sequence and limit how many shots. I remember going through it. And luckily, it's dark, and the acting is so good on Manny and Ellie that you're not paying any attention.
We also changed it from pollen to fireflies.
I love it.
Yeah, that was something we threw. I was just going to mention.
We're going to have things moving like pollen, fireflies. What next?
That was something we threw in story, because there is a lot of dialogue here where they're So what we were trying to think of ways that we could set the mood for a mammoth without a candlelit dinner. Fireflies. What we came up with.
One of the major inspirations, I think it was a story inspiration, was that she's supposed to get angry. There's an upcoming shot where she gets angry at Manny. And you're supposed to see the firefly scat, real quickly. And we kind of went around the table a little bit, which shots had the fireflies and which ones didn't. And I think when it all came to that, everybody just really wanted the beauty of the fireflies being in there. And that really just kind of gave mood to the mood to the sequence. And a whole bunch of our paint guys had to actually hand go in and take, little fireflies and just kind of paint them everywhere.
Oh, are you serious? I thought we animated those.
Well, they were animated, and then in some shots they had to actually be brought in and painted into the other one.
When they were gigantic.
Yes.
We got close to the camera next.
And they're actually flapping the shadows too.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this is sort of leading up to the impending dam break. The effects for that sequence are probably among the most difficult in the film because it involved the use of a actual like simulation, which is very difficult to control, and the simulation time is really long. But we'll talk about that later. Someone might want to talk about this sequence.
Actually, the nest was a gigantic problem. It wasn't ever sticks until we saw it rendered, pretty much. And there was actually about 5 or 6 different versions that everybody needed to support propagation mainly. But any kind of footfall or anything like that to try and walk on a nest that seems flat in a computer and it has just tons of sticks on it was fun.
We had to do a lot of tricky comp work with all the footfalls in there to make it. You would just cheat things in front or behind to make it feel like it was actually in there, since it was kind of animated as if it were flat, and then like you guys could never tell until it was rendered.
This was also going to be at the beginning of the film.
I was just gonna. Originally, this was going to be the teaser that it was going to be at the end of the Scrat getting blown up by water on the side of the glacier. He was going to be shot off into the bird's nest. And this was the first place we started playing with what Mike was talking about, like the Scrat's character and how to evolve him and getting him to interact more with the animals in the world versus just the environment. So now everything's out to get him. So
before too, in this with the shaking bushes, there used to be little eyeballs we were planning on having. I think through technique and this idea, we decided to get rid of it to keep it a little more mysterious.
Right. We were actually going to have, it was going to be sort of a foreshadowing of the mini sloths, that they are actually tracking him and following him. And I think it was a difficult thing to do technically, wasn't it?
It's not technically difficult. It's almost impossible to get it to read unless you take it all the way to the Scooby-Doo eyes on black level.
Yeah.
It just never read. It was just a little bit weird.
And the bushes were never thick enough for us to really put in a bunch of mini sloths so that we could do it how it really would work.
They built a rig that was just eyes.
Yeah, just eyeballs. That just never looked right at all.
And just from a story perspective with visual gags, that does happen sometimes where the story team sometimes, very often, will think in a 2D Scooby-Doo type of format. And so some of the jokes come from the fact that the storyboards are simply drawings. And not all the time. I mean, actually, the team here does an amazing job of translating almost every joke to 3D perfectly. But sometimes there's that one that just is a 2D joke, and it's got to stay that way.
This sequence coming up right here with the swimming gags, I think this was a great example of story and animation working together. It's kind of handed off to let's figure out different ways for Sid to show Diego how to swim on land. So we just did a bunch of example animations, and then handing that over to story, they really, took those ideas and framed it and gave it some great story ideas to it.
It's kind of funny. The rope kind of goes up about 10 feet.
Did you guys ever see that in lighting, like the shadow that just stopped?
Made sure to keep the shadows going.
Make a little picture with a little rock on it.
Yeah.
That was a good choice.
Also, one of the things in animation that we did for Manny and Ellie to differentiate them is their trunks. If you look, Carlos really wanted the trunk on Ellie to swoop outwards, while Manny, his trunk swoops inwards. It's just a little subtle touch to show how they're different.
And her tusks are smaller.
Yeah.
Okay.
Aren't they?
A little bit thinner, yeah.
And actually, an interesting thing is her trunk actually wraps inside up until she meets the possums, and then that's when she curls it out. You guys didn't know that.
Where's Baby Ellie? Yeah.
That's in the sacred moment when she's freezing in the snow and she meets Crash.
Interesting. I don't think I ever noticed that. So her she was more mammoth-like, and then she became a possum.
And it kind of mimics almost the possum tails. The way possum
that was the underlying thought.
These are just a bunch of artist geeks that have too much hand.
We read it in everything.
This was the saving the species speech.
Yes. Yeah.
That Manny got hauled on the mat for.
There's a shot coming up in here that gets a big laugh too. Is it Eddie on his back?
Yeah.
The thing he does with his fingers.
Evil eye. People started doing that after they saw that. It gets a huge laugh, and it's really so funny and charming.
That was a lot of back and forth actually between animation and lighting on that shot. I think Matt Simmons and I went back 3-4 times trying to get those fingers to read exactly, because we knew that it was a big shot for Carlos, and his face would be just in the wrong place, or the brown fur would be just behind the fingers. We had to stage it so that the brown fingers really red against the white fur, and it's like a very clear read.
And also, those fingers are very small in that
It's
huge
quite
frame, so you
On a
could
dark
lose that.
background, yeah.
In that shot, we actually did make the fingers longer just to get that to read. I remember going back on that one.
Coming up is one of the most difficult scenes I think we had from a story point of view, and I'm not sure technically if there were any challenges there too. But this was a sequence where we wanted to show Manny and Ellie's conflict, but not do it in a verbally, which is easy. It's very easy to do to show them fighting verbally, but to actually illustrate their conflict in action and with the environment, and show that their relationship is an emotionally delicate balance. And so doing it this way on the balancing rocks that we're about to see was incredibly difficult to get, the logic and the reality of actually boarding it to start with and getting it looking right. And then I don't know if there's
Yeah, I have to say
technically
this
it
was
was
an
the same.
extremely difficult sequence for previs and for layout and for everybody else. But yeah, it was that whole notion of showing this precarious rock balancing as a metaphor for their relationship at this point in the movie. At the same time, needing to build the sequence so that it would climax was really, really, really hard. And yeah.
Well, you guys built a really complicated rig for the rock pieces, and there's a lot of back and forth.
I got to say too, the camera work.
That was done on this was
some of the best in the movie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Really exciting.
I was going to mention that myself because story did not inform camera very much in this because, it was such an abstraction. It was the kind of thing that previs had to solve how that was going to work together because the boards weren't going to do it.
I mean, previs really had to sit there and almost model the length of the rocks, where the cliff was going to start and end, how it was constructed, the balancing construction there. So
I just came up with the design for the shape of the rock.
Yeah.
It's like a huge.
It was
I didn't know how.
It was an effort between design, previs animation and layout.
I wanted to throw some big props out to the lighting team here because this is a sequence that there was, like many others, there's a great call out for a lot of effects here, but we really just did not have the resources and the time to achieve it in the effects department. So lighting came in and did an amazing job with handling all the fog and all the great elements. Andrew, do you want to talk about that?
It was billed as a zero effects sequence to save Rob and his team time. And basically, all the atmosphere was essentially either painted in a composite with a compositing process or done with just like a very simple layering system. And it was just all massaged in the composite. A big thing, though, about this sequence from a lighting point of view is how graphic it is, and you have these strong shapes. And Tom, if you want to talk a little bit about that.
It's a good example of like the overall philosophy we had for the film, where we're staging with values, the value structure. Some of these backgrounds are nothing more than a gradation, and you see the upper left there it's lighter, and just trying to keeping everything very simple and just trying to focus your attention on the characters using just the value structure.
And there's been and throughout cinema, we've seen, characters over the moon shots, so many times, but I don't know, it never gets old. It's such a beautiful thing.
Effective.
Right.
Yeah. It's really beautifully effective.
This is one of my favorite sequences too, because it's like a nice quiet moment of just the characters relaxing. You're not trying to get any major story point out of the way. It's just sort of like,
Except that it's the day before they're due.
yeah,
Yes.
So you got one new element there.
It just comes right out.
And I think, they're talking about that here, about how it was, remember the good old days, and you mean yesterday, the day, last week, which is, I think, really fun. And then Sid says, he's going to get some sleep. Tomorrow's the day. The vulture said we're all going to die. And then he's out like a light.
Drop dead.
So, we have the jeopardy with comedy whenever possible. It's always helpful.
I really love this animation touch right here where she it's like a real tender moment between the sister and the brothers, and she tucks them in and then does a little thing with the mouth there. It's a really nice bonding moment that the animator added.
This sequence changed many times over the course of the storyboarding, but it always had the same resonance. It was always supposed to be about Manny seeing Ellie being tender and having that warm place, learning that he's got a warm place for her in his heart.
I think Carlos and editorial were really good about allowing us to let those shots breathe too. Whenever Ellie needed to, tuck them in, he was like, take whatever time you need to make it feel right. So it's nice.
And now we're coming up to one of the most popular and fun and difficult sequences that
Yes.
we've ever done is the mini sloth sequence.
Real quick thing before we head into that, though, I just think was always hilarious is that from Ice Age 1, Sid sleeping and rolling around.
Right.
It was so couple and it's great that you did a little couple of callbacks.
There were big shoes to fill on these shots because that first shot is like, in animator circles, is like one of the best shots from the first movie. So I don't envy the guys that had to take on these ones because, man.
I felt bad too because I went by the animator and kind of told him that, like, oh, you realize you're doing like one of the trademarks from the first one. He's like, oh, thanks a lot.
Yeah, Chris, you probably have a lot to talk about.
This scene, this scene went through many versions. I mean, the basic idea was always the same, but it's such a music-driven sequence. We really struggled to find what it would be once he gets there and starts the celebration with the mini sloths. And it's one of the earliest we had going in production, actually. So we started, I think, with sort of a generic dance kind of song. I think it was the Black Eyed Peas, actually, or something.
Oh, AC/DC, I remember.
No, this
was
before that. But the problem there is it sort of didn't have any focus, and then yes, we went to AC/DC, which was it ended up it wasn't right, but what it did is defined the energy of the scene. And when John Powell saw it, he's like, "We're not doing that."
John Powell being our composer.
Yes, the composer. Yes. He ended up coming up with a piece that was then handed to the story team and became the scene that you see here. So,
well, John actually, came up with this idea, and he played with us some Indonesian monkey chanting that was so unique and had such a fun quality to it. And then we all fell in love with it. Chris Melodon, who's our executive producer, Carlos, myself, story team. We all fell in love with that notion, and so he basically composed all this himself and, inspired by the monkey chanting.
And once he did that, it was boarding. It was, I don't want to say easy, but it was very intuitive. And that's kind of, with a musical piece, you need to have the music to create it because it's really, the timing is so tight. Right down through animation and everybody that you really need to define what that musical number is before you can have any kind of
That said, what happens once Sid goes over the edge of the cliff was all over the place, and was tremendous in scope at one point.
With the boneyard,
he became like this whole Godzilla like bone monster, 50 feet high.
Which we all love, by the way.
Yeah, I thought it was so funny.
What Rob had to say earlier, just we had to simplify it because it was too complex and we couldn't afford the time to do it and we couldn't do it. So we had to find a simpler way of getting to it.
But if you look, like when he actually goes down into the lava pit, just for a brief one shot, you actually see the dinosaur bones in the background there.
And it's actually, the materials on the bones are just beautiful. We were ready for that. Bone monster.
Here it comes.
There it goes.
There's actually the bones of a baby beaver.
Yeah, if you look closer, there's a little dead beaver there.
Actually, in this sequence, the lead mini sloth used to be orange the whole time, and then at the last minute we decided to make it the bluish purple to make it stand out more. Thankfully, Materials was able to go back in.
Right. Well,
animation.
The reason for that is because we had her. It was the same character at the beginning and at the end, and they were two different colors, and so we had to make a choice between the color. Remember, Tom?
Right. Yeah, and we did it the very last minute. We were, pretty much finished, and these guys swapped it out, and thankfully the lighting just worked, which was amazing.
We were mixing the film at that time. We saw that shot and we said, wait a minute, she's the wrong color.
A couple of days from being done.
The classic, everyone first said, no one will notice.
Yeah.
Okay. That only lasted about 2 days.
A quick shot went by, Matt, that you were telling me about earlier and I never noticed before, but the fur technology was so good that the characters standing in the water, their bottom half, the fur was all moving like it was really underwater and flowing, and the top half was totally fine. It's a really cool effect.
We've been using that shot in lighting for press releases and stuff like that related to the lighting. It's just like the quintessential shots with the renderer, the fur techniques, and all the animation you can do.
I'm telling you, I was kidnapped. I was worshipped, and guys.
So where are we going from here? Like, what's this?
Food Glorious Food.
Yes.
The vulture sequence, which was, again, one of my favorite sequences in the movie. It was just such a departure from the movie. And some people were unsure as to whether it would work. But it had been earlier in the film at one point, and it just wasn't playing in that place. And we thought more like a stage play. Why not have it, in the second act where you don't see it coming, you're not expecting it, but it's sort of like a palate cleanser in a way. But it still had something to say. It was still important because basically it was saying that these guys, if they don't make it, are going to be vulture food. So it sort of really reminded you of the stakes involved.
From a technical standpoint, the vultures were some of the most difficult characters to deal with as far as pass-through goes on their fur. And this sequence hadn't been created yet. But then after we got past the initial vulture scene from the beginning of the film, we saw this one. And I myself was just like, oh man, because hundreds of vultures.
When you say pass through, you mean because the
Feathers
feathers
would
would
go right through itself. And especially with the white collar and black body feathers, it was very, very obvious.
And our storyboard artist did an amazing job on this. It was,
This was the last scene, I think, whereas Mini Sloths was there. Yeah, this was.
And this was the last scene to be animated, the last scene to be rendered. I mean, this was the last scene. And if there was any scene that wasn't going to make it in the movie, it was this. And I was, no, this has to go. This has to be in.
Actually, I remember those arguments in Sweatbox, like where there was really on the table of whether this would make it in or not.
Yeah, but I had no
You guys were
doubt.
adamant.
Normally, from an efficiency point of view, to keep that lighting consistent, we like to have maybe 3 or 4 lighters and a lead on a sequence or whatever. Since this was the last sequence of the entire film for lighting, basically just about every lighter on the entire lighting team got their own shot and went in it. And it really didn't matter because the entire sequence is laid out in a way where each shot has its own set to it. So it was one of those things we actually had to go in from that point of view.
I have to say, I think the design of the vultures is really cool. I love the contrast of the black and the white, and the quality of the rendering, of the feathers is just amazing.
Yeah, the design of the characters are great. The color of the characters are tremendous, Tom. Just tremendous.
And it finishes off well with Sid's line, I always feel, when he sings
Yeah. Yeah.
it. Brings it together quite well.
And then having that piece of wood at the top remember there was at the beginning we were actually going to do more of a boat that the humans had built and left, and then we just decided not to have any mention of the humans in this movie at all, and so now it had to be something that was more natural, and I think we went through a lot of designs for that.
Right. Ended up with this gigantic hollowed out tree.
I remember reading on the internet saying, like, what do you think? Is Roshan the baby coming back? Is he going to be a teenager now?
No, it's funny. When we were first developing the story and writers were coming in and pitching ideas, they kept pitching ideas of Roshan growing up, or Roshan, or the humans, and now saving our animals. And the fact that I heard it so many times led me to believe that we should not go that way because it was too predictable, it was too expected. Mm-hmm. So we chose to stay away, altogether.
That is the first. The previous shot is the first time you see a dodo in film.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Although there was one in storyboards a while back. Remember?
Oh yeah. There was one where the villains. Thank you. the villains to show that they were omnipresent and could get you at any time. At the end of a sequence, the camera just pans over and there are 2 dodo legs with bones, just coming right out of the water. It was great.
Actually, an interesting thing about this, the sequence, really quick, is that the animators for those shots, we had one animator on Manny and one animator on Ellie to do the argument back and forth. So it was really like, 2 separate performances, and
It really worked out too because the 2 animators were in a room together, like they actually shared a room. So
and one person was getting paid twice as much.
One was the female. One was the female, one was the male.
One thing I wanted to say about this scene is that it had quite an evolution itself, and what ended up happening, which I think was great from a story perspective, is it became another opportunity, much like Balance, for the environment to reflect the characters, particularly the relationship between Ellie and Manny. And they had 2 different, even though they're both mammoths, they still have a different perspective. And, Ellie decides to be safe and go around, and Manny, being bullheaded, just decides to charge forward. So it became where we were having difficulty with the sequence. Once we sort of landed on that concept, it really became kind of fun and reinforced their relationship, much like Balance.
Right. So metaphorically, their relationship kind of blew up.
Right.
And went their separate ways.
Right.
I love the sequence. I think it's got some awesome camera work. I mean, there's all these handheld cams. It's got this Saving Private Ryan feel. It's really cool.
Some awesome Manny animation there too.
Yeah.
I just want to say some really awesome, subtle animation on Manny's face.
this sequence was almost outsourced for time reasons, and basically
I never heard that story.
Rob's team and lighting, we basically got together and came up with a technique where we just render just the geysers alone from many different angles and just place them in there in a lighting point of view, just to get the sheer numbers in there, and it worked really well. We were really happy with it.
I love that.
Came out
Yeah.
so beautifully
It's a
well.
great
It's
sequence.
strategically, and the artistry that you guys put into it was just amazing. And so many people have actually told me that that's their favorite sequence.
And this was Matt's other favorite.
Yeah. Proxy box.
There.
Or tell us what proxy box is next.
That shot had about 1,800 characters in it, and our computers can't really handle that many characters, so something called proxy boxes was invented, which we could place a box in a scene, and when our studio rendered, it would take the character walking and place it in that box. And so we could populate 1,800 characters in the computer that way.
But you hand placed all those boxes.
Yeah, they're all hand placed individually, walking up that huge, mile-long thing. And there's 1,800 characters. Don't look like they're going to fit in the boat, but they all are fine.
And there's plenty of room in the boat.
Yeah, plenty of room in the boat.
But like, I don't quite understand. Like, the box actually, by going at a certain speed, it knows that walk cycle, that time length,
Yeah.
and everything.
How fast the box would move is how fast the character will walk.
And now we're getting to your sequence, Rob. This is the dam-breaking sequence pretty soon.
Hand the mic over to Rob for the rest of the
Yeah,
Well, I'll just try to intersperse a quick comment, because I'm sure there's some other great animation and other creative and technical notes that people want to add. But I will say that this was probably one of the most difficult things that we had to figure out for the film, both just from a complexity point of view and just from a time point of view. This simulation alone of these shots took weeks to compute the final result, and we actually had only a week or two left on our schedule, and we were just sitting there watching the computer numbers, watching each frame come along, and praying that it didn't blow up in our faces. A number of different amazing techniques were created by the team to pull these off. The floodwater, the interaction of the characters with the water when they land in it are all detail elements that we wanted to add creatively to just sell everything that was happening in the best way possible. It was just an amazing, amazing accomplishment, and I don't know what more I can say beyond that. It was amazing.
There's also a lot of great crowd work here. I mean, just as a quick thing, I mean, the more characters you have in a shot, the harder it is for the animation team and the whole studio to deal with. But we had a lot of animators, background animators that we hired to help, and so all the performances are really unique and creative, and it's kind of cool that we're getting better at that kind of stuff at Blue Sky.
And the lighting in this whole in the whole third act, I mean, it's just wonderful. It's just brilliant. And I don't know if there are any particular challenges in that, but it just amazes me.
It was very difficult from getting the water integration, but it was one of those things. Tom's team provided us with some wonderful art direction, and just to me, just giving that kind of slightly warmish greenish blue sky. It just makes it ominous.
That was inspired by Winslow Holman paintings, actually. That's what we were looking at for this area, just that greenish hint to the water, and that you get a feeling from the color scheme that something big is about to happen, And
wow,
there's a storm sense going on.
Right.
There's this greenish sunlight in these dark skies.
yeah, it's I dare say apocalyptic.
Yeah.
And
I definitely would say that as far as animation is concerned, where you really get the characters feeling for it, there's a shot coming up with Manny. If I forget which one of you, if you guys want to point it out, and we're this one here, and it just says the imaginary.
I was going to touch on that real quick, because from a story perspective, we had a broad pass on the general the general events that took place. Ellie getting trapped, Manny having to rescue her, the villains coming in. But then we sat down and basically were told we had to change it to make it doable. And a lot of the things that we came up with, like Manny going underwater quicker, were things that sort of helped us achieve our schedule, essentially. And that shot was something we came up as a quick way to just sort of define the whole disaster, where you see Manny, he sees the wave, and boom, it tells the whole story in one shot. So those kinds of simplifications, even though it's probably not that simple, but cutting down on the number of shots, getting Manny underwater quicker, those were the kinds of things we had to do to maintain the integrity of the action, but also just make it achievable.
But
And
like Mike said earlier, it's like it feels like a much more creative way of
Yeah.
playing. Instead of actually seeing it, you're finding a more creative expression of it, and I think it's
Yeah.
more imaginative.
I think that, the one thing that, like, getting Manny underwater quicker sort of made sense from a story point of view. It also just was, it felt more perilous than just him being on the surface the whole time. So, yes.
The little note you'll kind of notice on shots where we're out in the middle of the water with the characters. We tried to give it that kind of buoyant handheld feel, which is like a total 2D kind of cheat that the lighters used information that we gave them. And then stuff that's locked on the ground is like the cameras are pretty much lock-offs.
And I think it's like in a shot like that, we were told not to have the characters breach the water, not to watch them breaching the water, and so we changed a lot of those. Is that right, Rob?
Yeah, that is true. There's only one shot in the film where we see the actual breach, and that's actually in the first one of the first sequences in the film. There's an awful lot of communication back and forth between animation and effects here because effects basically had to lead these sequences because the water itself is essentially a character, and that has to be sort of decided in terms of the height, the level of intensity prior to the animation of the character being put in there, because to do it the other way around would not work all that well. So there was a lot of sort of back and forth, and we actually tried to create a lot of control to direct the water so that, for example, when Crash and Eddie are in the water, we could make it more subtle because they're a lot smaller in scale than Diego and Manny.
But look, their fur. I'm sorry I mean, it just amazes me when they came out of the water and the fur and the possum.
It was a huge challenge of making these guys feel wet. Not only did the fur team groom the fur so that it was flattened out as fur would be soaked with water, but on the materials end, we struggled a lot in trying to get the highlights and a look of reflections on the fur that would make them feel like they were wet. For a long time, they looked like they were waxy and just covered with some sort of goo or something. So we struggled quite a bit to try to get that sheen off of them, and we had to work with the lighting group. As accurately as our renderer does reflections, it was way too expensive for us to do true reflections on the fur itself. So we had to work very closely with the lighting team to sort of emulate the reflections with other highlighting techniques.
One thing I'm happy about is our animations and interaction with effects in these water shots too, because we had a limited, dealing with that on robots with like the domino sequence, but effects was able to give us a red sphere in the water shots. We would get an actual piece of geometry that was the water surface with a red sphere in it, and that showed the exact speed and position that the characters had to be in, and that allowed us to really tightly integrate with what effects was doing.
There's also a lot of fine tuning after we would take what we were given and then see the final high res water surface. But I think that overall, with all the froth and everything, it helped integrate the characters really well together, the water surfaces.
There's actually one tool that we use a lot called follow through for animation, where under the water, a lot of that motion that you see on the hair and the ears and the tail is for free. It's honestly, I couldn't tell you how it's done. I just know I do is I hit a nice button.
I just know it works.
It comes to life for us. And, we put in some calculations and such, but it's just a really amazing tool to get some nice free motion that looks right on.
For all these sequences that take place during the flood, was there a color palette change?
Yeah, well, here, from the time that they first get to the boat, it was all very similar, except when they're underwater. And then right here, the mood is lifting. And we wanted it, you bring it down at this point, and then we wanted an impact of like when the sun is shining and things are okay now. So you'll see right after this, it's when it brightens up.
We're gonna die.
Just before you think everything is
right.
Just before come crashing down.
The animator on that shot, "We're Gonna Die," really pushed the face to the extremes. It almost felt like it didn't feel like Sid, but it's so funny and hilarious that it was just, we had to keep it. It was really good.
That close-up of all the animals screaming towards camera was one of the very, very last shots to get finished, and to know when that was going to make it into the film. And everybody came together, like all hands on deck, trying to get that shot done once we got the green light. And I think I'm really happy.
Yeah, hats off to the temp animators who worked on that, because they really worked their ass off. I mean, like 11 o'clock in the evening.
Work their butts.
Talking about this sequence, we sort of wrestled with how the day, who would save the day at the end. And I think there was some thought as to, well, Manny should save the day. He's the hero. But we felt that Manny had already saved Ellie. Diego had already overcome his fear of water and saved Sid and the possums. And we thought, what a surprise. This would be a really nice heroic turn for the Scrat, who is tortured all the time, who always comes through all his disasters, but this is the one time where we actually decided to kill him.
we had nowhere left to go with him. We had to kill him.
The guy was dead. But then
Secure is excellent at that section. You know, Scrat's demise is ultimately here, and the music cues are just beautiful.
yes. And we had effects and we had him screaming, we had everything. And ultimately Carlos chose to go just with the music because it was sort of like the death knell music. And it was just really effective. And he's taken away with the water. And that pays off at the end when he's in heaven. And ultimately we see what happens to him then.
If there are any characters missing, they already left and went home. And
That's what we're telling himself.
Well, yeah, there we go.
the other side.
The crap came through.
Well, one thing you'll see as this sequence progresses is it really becomes Manny and Ellie again in brilliant animation using the same animator for intercutting shots of Manny and Ellie. But the background crowd will magically disappear in the space of one or two shots. Like we realized we had to have them in there just to transition it, but they go away pretty quickly.
They're all anxious to go home.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, everything dried off pretty quick.
Yeah.
I know.
That's all right.
It would have been nice to have had a time lapse there, but we probably didn't have the time.
Yeah, right.
So who cares?
We had a
Nobody
time
knows.
lapse on our schedule.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the blue mini sloth that made us go back and
That's right.
the other mini sloths.
This
Purple.
Right.
needed to be blue to stand out from the crowd.
Yeah.
And so we had to keep this one, and we had to go back and change the one in the mini sloth area.
But Fire King has a prior commitment. His herd needs him. He is the gooey, sticky.
You guys were thinking of maybe taking some of the stuff out at one time, weren't you? Like, you felt it was a bit mushy for Diego to say the stuff to Sid, or was this always in the script?
I think it was always there to some extent. We always wanted Sid to hear that Diego, respects him. And to finally get through his story arc. And Diego finally does say it. I mean, he doesn't want them to go with he doesn't want them to go with the mini sloths. Nobody believed that the mini sloths existed and thought Sid was just sleepwalking. Now he's vindicated. So everything sort of is comes together. But the mammoth reveal here, I think, is one of the most important character turns for Manny in this story. Because we've set up that Manny, has a past. He doesn't want to get involved with Ellie, but ultimately, he takes up the cause of saving the species, and that becomes his excuse to be able to be with her and be able to, settle down with her. Now the mammoths have returned, and they've always lamented being the last mammoth, and now with the mammoth returning, it's a double-edged sword because they're very joyous that they're not the last mammoth and that the mammoth species will continue. But at the same time, it's taken away his excuse to be with her. Now he doesn't have to be with her for any cause. And now he has to soul search and see, can he let go of his past to be able to be with her? And he can't at the beginning until his friends ultimately convince him that he has to let go of the past to have a future. So it's really a bittersweet, very poignant, sad moment. And even John Powell, our composer, did something very sweet here, is that Manny has his own theme and Ellie has her own theme during the course of the movie. And at this point, because Manny is sort of, changing or not being alone, the composer actually put Ellie's theme on Manny and Manny's theme on Ellie and kind of switched them. And then he brings them together ultimately at the end. But it was really sweet because the Ellie theme, when she's a baby and she's isolated and alone, that's the theme he chose to use starting around this place. And so it's very effective. If you know that he's done that, it's very effective.
That's impressive because I was worried about the music because in the temp reels they had the theme from The Natural.
Yeah. Right.
That's all I could hear. I'm like, man, that is awesome. And
Yeah,
he wrote a good score.
Yeah, he did because
I
that's
know.
a hard piece to top. Yeah.
I think he topped everything.
Yeah.
I think John did such an amazing job with this beautiful score, and it was very emotional and resonant. I've seen kids everywhere doing that. It's been such a great thing when you see, children laughing at that. It gets a huge laugh, but you just see kids mimicking that, peace out.
Comes at a really great moment in the movie. I mean, there's such all this like quiet drama, and then all of a sudden that comes along and it really gets the crowd laughing.
But it fits though too.
Yeah.
It's great.
It fits. I mean, but the drama is all the more dramatic and the comedy is all the more funny when they're juxtaposed.
Those
Was it-
reflection shots are actual true reflections. We had to set up a special camera to do it.
They're not matte paintings.
They're true reflections for our studio, so
Right.
hats off to that.
Hey, studio.
You can tell the difference between that and the stuff at the beginning. It definitely looks better.
Another major character throughout the entire film is Glacier.
That's right.
It is a favorite of ours in lighting.
Because there were many of them.
Yeah, it's practically like in every shot of the movie.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, it's such a simple thing, but it was actually very difficult. We were always fiddling with it.
Tangents, it's always touching the top of somebody's head.
Oh, right.
We kept the materials in the model
Yeah,
very
it's
simple
models.
and didn't want to distract visually, and that ended up being a little bit of a problem.
Well, I never noticed until now. It's cool. That's probably good, right?
Not bothering.
That is the key.
Funny thing is, that's actually the exact same stick model that we used earlier when it was on top of Ellie's head, and the same twig. Same animation even too, just to keep it exactly the same but rule reversal.
Mm.
That made it so little.
These guys are so great.
There's some like callback dialogue here from the
Yeah.
first movie, which I think is really
Two
sad.
bachelors.
Yeah.
Callback.
Fine, but I'm not going to carry you.
But it's tinged with a little sadness this time.
Yeah.
My wife was starting to get mad at this point because she was like, "Are they really going to leave?" 'Cause she really separated.
We did in one incarnation in earlier drafts of the script. We actually
They separated.
separate, and it just felt wrong.
Yeah.
It just
Yeah.
felt
Right,
wrong.
like killing Diego in the first movie.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. We just couldn't do it.
They would actually they would never, and you were going to end it with just them all separating at the end.
Yes, we had that at one point very early on.
Yeah.
and
It didn't last too long.
No,
Yeah.
it didn't.
They're a dysfunctional family, and they have to stay together.
Be together.
I gotta say, seeing the movie over and over, I love it when people start getting up at the aisle right now. They're all,
I know.
Oh, yes, yes.
and then next thing you know, they're staring at the screen.
They really think that we killed the strat.
And this is a favorite. Everybody loves this sequence. It's just been so much fun to hear the comments and responses to the sequence.
Huge props go out to lighting. We pretty much got to animate Scrat, and then just on a surface, so we knew where the ground was, and then everything else with all the clouds and everything, with a few exceptions for some matte paintings, were all pretty much done.
Well, this Tom's team, they basically, this has zero set in it. The only props are the gate, the nuts, and Scrat. That's basically it. Everything else was painted in Tom's department. And when it came over to us, we in lighting, we basically just kind of massaged everything and moved it around and manipulated it. There's zero effects happening, which we were really impressed with.
How hard was that, Tom?
Well, it's very hard for
But we were really happy with the turnout. And what was really cool from an art direction point of view was, Tom, if you want to comment, you could depart from everything else that we were doing.
Yeah, it was just trying, once again, using the color and lighting to stage. It was, again, trying to keep the backgrounds very simple and focusing, using the light, in each, here you see the light coming from behind the nut, and then as things get away from the area of focus, they would become more violet, and and this one especially was so over the top, the whole scene. Even the background is over the top,
and the animations.
Animation.
Yeah, that shot's just amazing.
From an animation standpoint, it was really fun to we have these certain rules for Scrat where, you do the twitches and the fast, snappy motions. But then in this sequence, it was kind of all right, let's just throw everything out the window and let's just make him move totally different, where it's just this nice slow walking or this dancing. It's just really fun to just change his character up in this sequence.
Well, the animators too knew.
Graceful.
Yeah. We knew this was going to be a big sequence. It was going to be the bookend for the movie. So we really wanted to step up and do something great there. So
And of course, we don't really kill him.
Two quick things. That was the other time in the film where you see dodos, and they were in the heavens choir. And that one final shot, we always thought it would be better to fade it to white, because usually you fade heaven shots to white. But we came up with a real cool solution where we ratcheted down the camera to kind of give this real
I love
drawing
the way the light changes.
Yeah.
And one last little moment. All these drawings that you see on the end titles are all done by the Blue Sky children of parents who work there. So every child who did a drawing got their drawing on the end credits. And we did that for the first movie, and we just loved doing that, and the children loved doing it. And some of the kids are older, but they still submitted drawings. And so every drawing you see is done by a child of someone who works at Blue Sky.
My daughter, when she did the first one, she was probably like 5, and she drew a cactus. And now that she got a chance to redraw it, she was like, I must make this perfect. I have no idea why I added a cactus in it.
One of the interesting things that I noticed, for the first time was seeing the credit roll was how many children of some people did the voices in the film.
I thought you were going to say
this one,
how many children were born while this was made.
It's funny because when we were actually doing the temp tracks and we were doing our story reels, we needed some kids' voices, and so we sort of borrowed some of the children to come in and just sort of try out how things would sound to us, how the lines read, how they worked together, and some of the voices were really great, and we got used to them, and we just we felt every other voice we heard wasn't quite right, so we tried to use those kids again, and we were very successful with them, I think. It's the same thing with the voice of the Scrat in the first movie. Chris Wedge, never had any intention of actually voicing a character at that time. But when he was pitching the boards for the Scrat, he would do these little sounds and these little voices. And every time he would pitch it, we would all laugh. He would sort of do more, and we would encourage him, and he would be, and it became so much a part of the character, the visual that we saw, that voice, they became, connected. You couldn't take them apart, and we couldn't find anything that would have been better or funnier than Chris Wedge's voice for the Scrat. So you get used to these things, and it works.
I remember in animation, we were in Sweatbox, and Carlos's 2 kids, I guess his daughters, did the "Come on, Grandpa, come on," and he was like, "Come on, guys, you got to make this really cute for me." My kids really have to pull through and make these really cute characters.
That was fun. So in final wrap-up, did we miss anything?
We missed everything.
Is there more to say?
No, I don't think so. I think hopefully what comes off is that we all had, I think, a really good time doing this, right?
Yeah. It was an experience.
It was great, and we just have to thank Carlos for making it so spectacular for all of us. Carlos and Chris Wedge and Chris Meledandri, Fox and Blue Sky, and all the great people who worked on this show. It was a tremendously enriching and rewarding experience.
It went by really fast, but it was really fun. I mean, the whole time in the beginning, we were like, how are we going to do this? We were stressed, but you know what? While we were in there, we were just having so much fun, and it went by really, really fast.
And I think you see the fun on the screen, and I think that's why it went so smoothly. I think everybody enjoyed working with each other, and the process was great.
I think that this is the kind of movie that we'll all look back on like many years from now, and it will be a big standout in terms of just a great accomplishment artistically, technically, and it's a great thing that we did at Blue Sky.
Hear, hear.
Yes.
All right. It's an idea for Ice Age 3, right?